Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at Microsoft Dynamic Emergency Calling. All right, now what I'm going to do here is give you first a descriptive slide on all the components. We're going to take each component one by one. And as we go one by one, then we're going to look at a visual drawing to kind of tie that in visually, how things are configured and how things work. Then we're actually going to go to the Microsoft Teams admin portal and configure each component as we go along step by step. After we have everything configured, then we're going to demo the dynamic emergency calling by dialing 933. That's the test calling. And then we're going to move a Teams client within the enterprise. And then we're going to move a Teams client outside of the enterprise onto the internet and test dialing 933 or our test 911 number. Now, at the end, I'm going to wrap up with a couple of nuggets that are interesting to note when it comes to dynamic emergency calling and static addresses attached to numbers and things like that. When we do this move out to the internet thing, we're going to look at the new feature, the work from home feature. I'm going to point out how that works. And I'll go ahead at the very end point out where you enable that. You can enable it through PowerShell at first. It's already in the GUI now, and I'll point that out. So this work from home feature is part of that, Ray-Bans and carries. Remember in January 2022, the kind of nomadic thing or any movement of phones outside the enterprise kind of came into play. So we're going to take a look at that. It's a new feature. Released a few months back, and it's pretty neat, works pretty well. So come along, let's get started and see what we can learn. Let's review dynamic emergency calling in Microsoft Teams. And what I'm going to give you here is something that helped me understand it and configure it. So after this, you'll be able to configure your dynamic emergency calling in your tenant very easily. I'm going to give you both textual descriptions and why we do things, and then we're going to look at visual descriptions on how things work, how we configure them, and then we'll go and actually do them in the admin portal, and then we'll go actually make the emergency calls and see what happens when we move clients and things like that. Okay, let's talk about the first thing that we need to do is the trusted IPs. The question that we're trying to answer here is, am I on the enterprise network? That's what trusted IPs have to do with. Let me give you the visual representation of this. Here's the network, and we'll go through just about all of it, but I'm going to go piece by piece. Here are our internet routers, and we have IP addresses right there, and you can see they're green. Okay, just like this is green. So I have two green ones right there. So those are my two trusted IPs. Let's just remember 172.32 and 48.58. And we have this other router over here, and it's outside of the enterprise. And we can see its IP address right there, and there is no green there because it's not a trusted IP address. And the logic here is, if you're within the enterprise here, you're going to register out to Microsoft Teams with your client, and the source address is going to be one of these two addresses. The next thing we need to do is look at the configuration. So I can see here locations, network, topology, trusted IPs. By the way, this column right here, this row tells you where to go configure it. So as we go through these things, this is going to clue you in to where to go configure it. If I look here, locations, network topology, trusted IPs. Okay, we go to locations in the admin portal, network topology, and trusted IPs. And there are our two IPs, 172.32 and 48.58. Very easy to add IPs here. Just do that. Put your IPs in there, subnet mask. Let's look at it visually one more time. There it is. There are my two IPs. Note, I don't have this one because this is Starbucks or outside of my enterprise, so I don't care about it. Okay, let's go on to location information services. This is our list database. This is where our addressing is going to be picked up from our clients. The address that we're going to give the emergency response operator to, or go through PITA-flow and all that technical jargon. So we have to pump out some addresses here. What are we answering with this? Where am I? Where is the client based on this database? And what address am I going to send? So let's take a look at it visually. Yellow. Remember, we're yellow over here. Everything's color-coded. We're yellow, so let's take a look at our yellow. And I have our yellow right here. You can see it's in this box right here. There's our location information services. And then what I have is one location with two places. You can also say it's one location with 2 floors or 3 floors. Okay? When we say places, we mean same location, address, I should say, same address, different location at that address. And you can see here I have 2 places. I have an office place and I have a house place. Those are distinguished by subnet. So in the office place, I have this 100.0 subnet assigned to this, and in the house I have the 101 assigned to it. And you can see my network topology here. I have 101 network in my house, and I have 100 network in the building. Now let's see where we go configure that, where we would go to locations, emergency addresses, and places. Okay, let's go get this out of the way. We're going to go locations, emergency addresses. Here are the emergency addresses. Now this should say Farmtastic. Remember, I named it Farmtastic here, right there. However, something's wrong with the admin portal right now and it doesn't say Farmtastic. But that's it. And you can see this particular emergency address has 41111 North Mill Drive, so on and so forth. Let's go into that address. You see we have emergency address Farmtastic, and under Farmtastic we have 2 places. Visually, again, 2 places. One place here, one place there. Let's see how they're configured. Let's go into house. We go into house. Now I want to show you right up here so you can kind of track with me. Emergency address, Farmtastic house. And we have a subnet right there. And to add subnets, you can just add subnets. So if you had extra subnets in the house, in my or floor or whatever, you would just add them right here. Okay, you wouldn't have to add this location because it's already in the house location. All right. So let's take a look. Let's go back one. We're at the Farmtastic address, and we're going to look at another place. There's the office place. I'm going to go look at subnets, and there's my subnet. So visually again, hopefully that makes some sense. Now let's continue on this little block here. Let's don't get past that. I want to visually kind of bring things home on that block. What we're saying here is if you are a client and you dial 911 from the building here, from the office, you'll be on this subnet, or when you register, you'll be on this subnet. Hence, you'll do all the PITA-flow stuff, but you will eventually give out to the PSAP this address with the addition of this place. And the reason is because you came from that subnet. Similarly, if you would dial 911 from the house here, you would have originally registered from this subnet. Hence, you would give out this address. However, this is the place that you would be coming from. Okay? So we just now did our list service. That's all there is to it. Now, of course, you can do by subnet as we're doing, port, switch, wireless access point. So one more thing I want to mention here is this is like a hurdle. You have to get over this hurdle to do anything over here. Okay, there's my little hurdle guy. So this will kind of drive the point home. We have to be coming from a trusted IP. We had to register from a trusted IP. So we have to jump this hurdle before any of this other stuff right of this box happens. As I said in the diagram, if we were this person, we would pass the hurdle because, or we would jump the hurdle, send the correct location because we were originally registered. When we registered out here to the internet, we registered from this IP address. Or how about Alex? He registered out to Teams and he would originally be coming from this IP address. Both of which are in our trusted IPs, which we saw earlier. So let's go on and talk about emergency policies. The naming conventions here just get a little wonky. And I finally got them straight in my head, again, by putting them on paper and visually and textually kind of looking at what is kind of together. The emergency policies consist of both calling policy and the network topology. And then these two tie together, and I'll show you that in a minute. So what question let's go to the red one first, the emergency calling policy. What question are we trying to answer here is basically what to do when someone dials 911. Remember the Ray Bonds and Carries Act? We have to notify somebody. This is it right here. Let's take a look at visually what we're going to do here. Here's the red. Remember, we're red right here. So let's go look at the red. And you see I have this box here and this box here. And I named them emergency calling policy. Emergency calling policy. And remember I said the emergency calling policy has two things in it. The emergency policy and the network topology. All right, I think I said calling policy before, but emergency policy. In fact, let's go ahead and change this. I'm going to say, I'll name that emergency policy. So we stay straight here. Okay, so what do we have in emergency policy? Well, we have the policy name, and then we have what to do. Here we have notification mode, conference muted number, or conference muted. In other words, conference someone in muted, and we have it pointing to Thomas Paine. And then we have to conference in a number. So we're going to dial out to this little cell phone out here. Okay, that's it. Now let's look at this other policy here. So we have two policies, and this one's called Call Policy House, and this one has notification mode, send notify only, and we point that to Thomas Paine as well. So let's go back to our configuration. Take a look at this. And let me throw this here. Where do we go? We go to Voice, Emergency Policies. All right. So let's go configure that. It's under Voice. We're going to go to Emergency Policies. And then remember, we had two policies, Call Policy House and Call Policy Office. Call Policy Office, Call Policy House. All right, let's look at Office first. We have a notify. We want to notify this number, and we want to Teams notify and conference in, but mute them, Thomas Paine, the security desk guy. Let's go to Call Policy House first. Very easily configured. I mean, you can do a new one here. I won't show you that. And then we're going to send notification only. And then we have a group or a single person that we notify. Let's look at the other one. Call Policy Office. We give it a description. I'm going to pull this down so you can see what's available there. We're going to conference in, but mute. And we're also going to dial out this number and conference it in. So these are two different things. And here's the group. Thomas Paine again, the security desk guy. Okay, again, let's go back and just look at it visually. We looked at this policy. It's going to notify and outpulse here. or call out to the PSTN, I should say. And then we have this policy over here that's just going to notify. Okay, we have our last thing, and that's the network topology. And what we're trying to answer here is, where am I based on the topology, that topology being subnet or whatever, so that I can dynamically assign an emergency policy. Okay, so let's take a look at that. We have to go to Locations, Network Topology. And just real quick, I want to point to subnet. Remember, we configured subnets over here in the Location Information Services, where we were trying to answer the question, where am I, so I can give the right address to the PSAP. It's important to note that this subnet and this subnet are two different things. They're two different pieces of configuration. They have nothing to do with each other. Let's go take a look at it, and let's go configure our blue section. Here's our blue section. And I have a network topology here, and we have a network region for another day, network site for another day. But you can see I have a network site here. I named the site Anson Office, and I have a subnet there. Okay, again, it has nothing to do with the subnets we have over here in the list services. And then we have this other red thing right here. That's our policy. And you can see that I'm tying the policy over to the network topology. That's the trick on how to glue these two together. Here's my other network topology site, Anson House. See, I have a subnet there, and I'm tying this emergency policy to this network topology. So where do we go to configure that? We go to Location, Network Topology. We're going to go down. We're going to go to Location, Network Topology. And there are our two. If we want to add one, you can add one there. Anson House, Anson Office. Okay, let's look at each one of these individually. I'll click there. We can see that's where we tie to the emergency calling policy. All right, and look down here. We have a subnet also. So this is the call policy house and the network topology Anson House. All right, so let's look at that visually. There's the network topology Anson House, and we're tying in this call policy, calling policy house, or underscore house, or call policy underscore house. Hopefully that's clear. So let's look at the other one real quick, just so we make sure everybody sees the office here. You can see we have a subnet in the office, 100.0, and we're also tying it to an emergency calling policy. Okay, let's do some testing. Now what we're going to use is Alex's client here. Alex's client is right now on 101. In fact, let's go ahead and move him. Let's move him over here. He's in the building here. Okay, so we're going to take a look at some testing. We're going to use Alex. Alex's client is logged in over here in the building. So he's on 100.0. So when he registered for 100.0. If we dial 911, let's just visually look at what's going to happen. We are, one, going to see if we're coming from trusted IP. We're going to be on the 100.0. So the address that we're going to give is this address with this place. So those two together. And then our calling or emergency calling policy should be, since we have a subnet right there, and that's the subnet we're on, should pick up this network topology that wraps in this calling or emergency policy, which then does this whole emergency calling policy, which is a Teams notify and conference in but mute Thomas Paine and dial out here. Let's try that. Okay, here we have Alex's PC. Let's go over to the call tab. While we're waiting on that, we're going to bring up, and I'm going to show you that we are indeed on 100.0 VLAN. Let's visually take a look at that again. 100.0, so Alex is right here. And let's look at the call tab here. And you can see, right here is where you see your location and place. All right, and we can see the right location and we can see the place, office. Remember, this is the location and the place because we registered from that address. All right, so the client already knows what's going on. Let's go ahead and dial our emergency test number, 933. This is what's going across PIDFlow right here. So that's correct. Notifying Thomas Paine. And we should hear a phone. There's the phone. So I'll go ahead and answer the cell phone. Let's go ahead and go over to Thomas Paine's PC. There's Thomas Paine's PC. Oh, it logged out on me. You can see he's getting a call here. There we go. So this is Thomas Paine. Alex, he's in with Alex there. Okay. And if we go look at Alex, you can see that everything went through okay. So we both got the notification. We called the PSAP. We conferenced in. Everything did what it was supposed to. Now what's really cool is, let's go back to Thomas Paine real quick. And I want you to see this Thomas Paine's Mac right here. You see Thomas Paine even gets, and this is part of the Ray-Bons and Carrie's stuff, remember? You have to give the on-site personnel or whoever you're notifying. You don't have to, but you should try. There's the address. Okay, so not only does it go out to the PSAP or the ECRC, but the person that gets notified also gets that address as well. Let's go back and take a look at the visual representation of this. So again, number one, we called 911. We picked up the right address. We sent that out. We engaged the calling policy because we were on 100.0. We called this calling policy. We sent a notify and conference in Thomas Paine, which we saw on Thomas Paine's Mac. And then we notified the mobile phone there. So everything worked as it should. Let's go back. Let's hang this up. Now let's take Alex and let's move him over here. Okay, let's take his network cable, move it over here, and let's go do that. All right, this is my VM here. In fact, let me clean this up. I know it's a little confusing sometimes what's going on here. Here's Alex's PC. Let's go and edit. So this is a virtual machine. I'm just editing the VLAN it's on. And we're going to go over to VLAN 101. Remember, our IP address was on 100. So it's going to change. That was our last IP address. I'll do an IP config again. Let's give it a second. There it is. You can see we changed subnets. And did you see how fast this changed here? I don't know if you were looking, but rewind the video and you can see it picked up the place, house, right? We just changed from here to here, and remember, this is the emergency address plus this. So the address plus the place is house, and you can see that Alex's computer or Microsoft Teams picked up the house place. In other words, it changed the address, basically. Changed place, but it could be an address, it could have been whatever. But we can see how fast that happened. Let's see visually. We should call out 911. We should give this address plus the house place, and then we should pick up this policy because this subnet's 101 and that's where he's registered from, and we should only notify the security desk Thomas Paine. Let's see if that happens. There's 933. We're looking for house and all the PITAFLOW or to the ECRC, to the PSAP. Boom, there it is. That's good. Let's go over to Thomas Paine's Mac. Let's see, 621. You can see down here in my PC, 621. That just came in, so we just got notified that Alex called 911. It also gives us the location and place. House, Farmtastic, and there's the address. So everything worked as it should. Let's go back over to Alex. Let's go ahead and hang this up. Now, let's go ahead and move Alex. And he's going to go off campus. He's going to go out here in internet land. Let's move his client way over here, outside the enterprise. Remember, now we're not going to pass this first hurdle, the trusted IPs, because he's going to be registered from out here, out on the internet. And this is not one of our trusted IPs. Hence, none of this stuff is going to happen. No list stuff, no emergency policies, or anything like that. So let's go do that. I'm going to go to the VM again. We're going to change the subnet here. I know that this subnet 20 is in my DMZ outside of my enterprise. We'll go ahead and do that. Let's look for the IP change. And there it is. So I'm on 192.168.20.23. Again, visually, nowhere inside my list service, network topology, nothing. So again, we're outside, registered, out here in the internet. Let's see what happens. Now I want you to notice something. Our address changed over here, and you may ask, why is that? Well, the reason is because I did this demo before, and the last time I went over to this subnet, I put in an address, okay, and it just picked up that address again. So in reality, if like we went to, let's say, Starbucks or something like that, and we get a different address all the time, I'm going to reset this. This is what it would look like. You would get this location not detected. And when we have location not detected, we have the ability to add. Now, when we were inside the enterprise, we did not have the ability to add. In fact, let me do that so you can see it. Let's go back. We're going to connect. We're going to move back into the building or the office. Okay. Watch this. There it is. You see there? Okay. But let me pull this down. And you see I have no ability to add anything because this is dynamic. It knows based on my sysadmin, right, and all the emergency routing stuff that we've configured, it knows where I'm at, where I am. Okay, let's go back out again on internet land. Okay, you see there? Location not detected. So, okay, let's go ahead and place a call while we're out on the internet and see what happens. So, 933. And we're going to call. Now you can see here, no address goes out. Now I was quite surprised about that. I thought at least the default address should go out, and that I didn't show you the default address. However, there are default addresses associated with numbers. They have to be associated with the number before you can assign them to a person. Okay? So anyway, no emergency location information went out. So that's interesting. One thing did happen, though, and I want to show you. If I go to Anson's computer and look at his teams, you can see it notified me that someone made an emergency call. And you can see no one or no address went out. Why did that happen? Well, there's one thing I didn't show you, and that is in the users. Let's go look at Alex. There are policies, and there's an emergency calling policy. You'll see that down here, right there. And the policy that I have there is an org-wide one. Now that org-wide one just has one thing in it, and that's to notify Anson. So, in other words, if it falls into somebody that's outside or enterprise, we can give it a global calling policy, and I'll take a look. We'll take a look at that global policy. You can see that it just says to notify Anson. So that's why Anson got notified. Now let's go through one more scenario. Let's go back to Alex's computer, and let's go ahead and engage with this new feature where we can add a static address. And we'll go ahead and add this 41110 77354, country US. And we're going to add. And boom. Now let's go ahead and test a 911 call. Now we can see that that address is going out, so that PITAFlow, and it's going to go to the PSAP and ECRC and all that other stuff. And then at 6:32, let's go look at Anson's PC and see right there. So at 6:32, Alex placed a call and floor 5. So we get that information that the user put in, Starbucks or whatever. So the whatever policy you have globally, in my case anyway, you can put any policy on there, but it's going to pick up that calling policy or emergency calling policy for your notification if you want that. Anyway, hopefully this puts things together for you, and you can go configure this and test it out and kick the tires on it and things like that. So the one thing I'll just end with is when we did Alex's, let's go ahead and reset this so we don't have one. Okay. And remember, I did this test here and we got nothing. No address, location going out. Okay. I want you to look at the configuration, because remember I said in the visual that every phone number has a default registered address, civic address associated with it, and so does Alex's. Okay, Alex is 4206, right? 4206. So let's go look at 4206. Let's go to phone numbers and let's look at 4206 and let's edit. And you can see that there is an address. This is a static address that you have to give You have to attach to a phone number before you give that phone number out to a user. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at a phone number. Here's a phone number I have. If I were to want to give this to a user, I'd have to have it first, or I can do it at the same time, but it has to be tied to a static address, location, civic location. For example, if I wanted to give this to Alex, oh, it's not going to let me do that because he already has a number. Well, let's go out and hold on. I'm going to delete that and we'll come back here in a second. Okay, what I did in the background is I took the number away from Alex. So Alex now, here's Alex over here. He no longer has a number. All right, let's take a look at that. His number was 4206, this one right here. We can edit that, and you can see it's not assigned to anybody. But it has a static address assigned to it. Okay? Now, if I wanted to assign this to Alex, again, I just type Alex there. His name's going to come up. I can click Assign, and I can click Apply. I won't do that here because I want to show you the difference. Let's go to this number right here. Let's say I want to give this number to Alex. Type Alex. His name comes up. I can click Assign. However, I can't apply. I can't apply because I don't have a static address connected to the phone number. I have to have that first. That's why I was a little concerned when we were outside with Alex's PC and didn't put a static address in his client, and still it gave nothing to the ECRC or PSAP or anything like that. So you know, comment below on this, or if you have an answer for that. I'm still scratching my head on that one. I thought that would go out. Okay, I told you at the beginning that I'd come back around and tell you exactly where to set and why Alex was able to set his location when he was out on the internet. Okay, you see he has this ad here, and the reason that is because if we go look at his user, I had something go wrong there. Okay, we recovered. And if we go to Alex here, there is a emergency calling policy that's not dynamically assigned. It is statically assigned. And we see that under his user. Go to policies here. And if we scroll down, we're going to see an emergency calling policy right there. And if I click on it, it's going to take me to that policy. And you can see this guy, external location lookup mode is on. So we pick up this policy. Let's go to our drawing. When I don't dynamically get assigned, remember this says where I'm based on topology, dynamically assigned emergency policy. So if I'm within one of these subnets, the 100 and 101 subnets, I was assigned a policy automatically. And when I went out to the internet, or when Alex went out to the internet, then he did not get either one of these assigned to him. So he took the default that was assigned to his user. And that default assigned to his user is, again, right here. And the emergency calling policy. And that's on, and that's why he was able to update his address. Hopefully this has been educational, and thanks for watching.